Hey everybody, it's Chynna from the CW Reads, and today I thought it would be a good idea to share you what books I read in the month of June. So it is time for another June wrap-up. I read a total of 3 books in the month of June, and some of them were better than others, and it was kind of a slow reading month for me just because June was so packed with so many things that I had to do on the weekends and everything, so I didn't really have a lot of time to read. But I also thought it would be fun to share with you the TV show that I finished in June as well. So I will also be talking about that, and I will also share with you my July TBR. I normally don't set up TBRs just because I'm more of a mood reader, but I am participating in the Canadian Read-EH-Thon that is hosted by a few Canadian booktubers, and I will have their channels linked down below if you're interested in participating. This readathon is going from July 1st to July 8th, so if you haven't joined the readathon, you still have time to, and you definitely don't have to be Canadian to join the readathon. I just thought this would be a really fun readathon to participate in because I love readathons, and I also want to read more books from authors who aren't from my native country, which is the United States of America. So without further ado, let's just get straight into the wrap-up. So the first book that I read in the month of June was Fahrenheit 451. I got this book when I was in Seattle because I stumbled upon a bookstore, and this was one that has been on my TBR for a while now, mainly because the HBO movie adaptation recently came out and I wanted to watch it mainly because Michael B. Jordan plays the main character, Guy Montag, and also this is a classic that I've always wanted to read and see what it's all about. So this is Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury, which is set in a dystopian future where books are outlawed and are burned if they are anywhere in sight. So if they are in a household, they are burned along with the house, and actually these people called firemen burn the books, and Guy Montag is a fireman, and then he kind of starts to think that this might not be a good idea to be burning these books. So he takes a break from work and decides to read a book, and he actually reads the Bible just to see what these books are all about. And sometimes firemen do this if they don't agree with what they are having to do. So then he actually quits his job and tags along with this retaliation group and kind of discovers that there are more to books than what the government tells them. So I actually didn't really enjoy this book for a few reasons. So I ended up giving this a 3.75 out of 5 stars. I really didn't care for any of the characters, and especially Guy Montag, because I really didn't like how he thought of his wife, who throughout the story we find out that she is actually a drug addict and their marriage is really falling apart. And so he meets this girl, Clarice, and he kind of like rethinks his marriage, and I just really didn't like how he acted towards his wife and thought about his wife, so that kind of threw me off from the get-go. And I also didn't think there was a whole lot of world building in this book, which I felt was necessary because I really wanted to know why these books were being outlawed and why they were being burned, but I feel like we didn't really get a lot of that. And also it's a really short book, so that's probably a reason why we didn't get a lot of world building. But yeah, like the only character who I really enjoyed was Captain Beatty, who was Guy Montag's boss. He actually allowed like people to read books if they weren't sure that this is what they wanted to do, and I also just thought he had an interesting way of teaching Guy. But yeah, that was the only thing that I liked about this book, and which is why I gave it such a low rating. But I did appreciate the themes that it was trying to portray. So like I still think about the themes that Ray Bradbury was trying to come across in this book, and so that's why I gave it a 3.75 instead of just a flat 3, because I did enjoy those aspects, but just the whole story and character plotline just didn't really intrigue me. I was really in the mood for dystopians after reading Fahrenheit 451, and as well as science fiction. So the next book I decided to pick up was Renegades by Marissa Meyer. This has been a book that I've been wanting to read since it came out, but I really wasn't in the mood to read such a gigantic book. But I was finally in the mood after reading Fahrenheit 451. And similar to Fahrenheit 451, there are a lot of things that bothered me about this book. So I ended up giving it a 4.2 out of 5 stars instead of a full 4. I was really specific with my ratings this month because the previous month I read so many good books and these kind of just didn't live up to those books. But Renegades is written by Marissa Meyer, who wrote the Lunar Chronicles, and I haven't read the Lunar Chronicles, but I kind of want to read them just because so many people love them on BookTube. I feel like I kind of have to read them since I do love dystopian novels and science fiction novels. So hopefully I can get to those sometime this year. I don't know when. But Renegades follows 2 characters, Nova and Adrian. And Adrian is a renegade, which are these superheroes that kind of help out the city that they are in. And this is set in a future world. And Nova is actually considered a villain because in her past she actually witnessed her parents' death and actually prayed that the renegades would come and help her family, and they never came, and so she's kind of had this vendetta against the renegades because they never helped her. And so I was really interested in finding out a lot about Nova's past, and we kind of do, but not really. We're more so focused on her getting revenge for her family against these renegades, and she kind of works along with other villains, which was really interesting. I thought the extraordinary abilities in the story was super unique, and that was one of the main reasons why I really liked this book. I also really liked our 2 main characters. At first I kind of thought Nova was like a typical YA female protagonist, but once we started getting more into her backstory, I really grew to like her. And same with Adrian. I thought he was a really interesting male character, and I really liked how he helped develop Nova as a character. So those were the main things that I liked about this book. The one thing that kind of drew me away from this book was the writing style. I thought it was really slow at certain parts, and I thought Marissa Meyer did a really good job at writing all the action scenes. She's a really good action plot writer, I guess you would say, but I feel like it kind of lacked in world building, just because I feel like we didn't really understand why they have these renegades. I mean, it was kind of mentioned, but I feel like it could have been more mentioned, even though it is like such a big book. I actually thought it could have been a little bit shorter because it did drag on a little bit. I thought Marissa Meyer's writing style was kind of monotonous in tone and typical YA, so like I wasn't really invested in the story as I thought I would be, so that's why I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars instead of a 5. But this is like a book that I really like to read. I'm actually writing a book that kind of has the same theme of like superheroes and anti-villains, and it was actually inspired by Renegades. So yeah, like I said, I enjoyed the book, but like it wasn't what I was expecting because so many people loved this book. And yeah, the last book that I read, I actually listened to on Audible, and that was Shadow and Bone, which is from the trilogy, and it is the first book in the Grisha trilogy by Leigh Bardugo. I finished the Six of Crows duology last month and really loved it, so I thought I would read the Grisha trilogy because Six of Crows is actually set in the Grisha universe. And what I thought lacked in world building and stuff was definitely shown throughout Shadow and Bone a lot more. I really appreciated the world building in Shadow and Bone, as well as the magic system. I thought it was really, really unique. A lot different from a lot of YA fantasies that I have been reading this past year. I really liked the darkness that was in this book, because in this book we follow our main character Alina, who finds out that she is a Grisha, but she doesn't believe she's a Grisha Grisha, I don't know how it's pronounced, but she doesn't believe that she's a Grisha, but she runs into the Darkling, who believes that she is one because she has this power, this magical power that can help save their country. And so she kind of undergoes training to take hold of her power, also discover who she really is as a person. And so I really liked our main character, Alina. I thought she was really interesting, and I really liked her backstory and getting to know her more. Like I said before, I loved the dark magic system within this book. It was really kind of like slow burning, but really, really interesting. And as for the Darkling, I thought he was kind of an interesting antagonist, but I really didn't like his relationship with Alina. I don't like ship them at all. I've seen around BookTube that a lot of people ship Alina and the Darkling, but I really don't. I really like Alina, and Mal is another male character in the story. They're really close friends, and they kind of grow into a more romantic relationship, and I really liked that relationship, but I really, really didn't like the Darkling or Alina. I ended up giving this a 4 out of 5 stars. I was going back and forth because while I really did enjoy the story, I thought it was kind of slow, and I don't know if that's because I listened to it on Audible. But yeah, that was the main reason why I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars as opposed to a 5 out of 5 stars. Like I said, I really loved the story and everything, and I'm hoping to kind of just fly through this trilogy like I did The Magicians, because I am really interested in learning more about Alina's path in the story, as well as learning more about the Shadowfold, which is the dark magic that is taking over Ravka, which is the country that they live in. So yeah, those are all the books that I read in June. I started 2 other books, but I wasn't able to finish them. So I am reading The White Queen by Philippa Gregory and The Best of Me by Nicholas Sparks. I read a lot of heavy and intense books in June, so I thought it would be fun to read like a quick contemporary novel. But I will talk about that more in my July wrap-up. And I'm putting a pause on those books because I am doing the Canadian Read-EH-Thon, so which I will talk about my TBR after I talk about the shows that I finished in June. So June seemed to be the number of 3s. I finished 3 TV shows in the month of June. I started Bloodline, which is a Netflix original, and I started that I think in May. And Bloodline is a story about a family who kind of has a very intense past. They live in the Florida Keys, and all we know is that one of the brothers returns back after a really long time, and that something happens to the brother when he returns. We don't really know what happens, but they kind of reveal that something terrible happened, and that his other siblings were a part of what happened to him. And we also know that in the past, there was a really horrible accident that happens, and the main reason is because of this brother that returns back to Florida. Throughout the season, we begin to see what that accident actually was through like bits and pieces of people's memories. And yeah, so I really, really enjoyed this Netflix show a lot more than I thought I would. This isn't normally the type of show that I usually watch. It has always intrigued me because of 2 of the actors that were in it. It has Kyle Chandler, who plays one of the main brothers, John Rayburn, John Rayburn, and he is the oldest brother who is a detective, and so along with like everything that's going on with his family, he is also dealing with this major crime that is happening, and with these girls that are being found washed up on the shorelines near where he lives. So he's trying to figure that out, along with trying to bring his family together, but obviously like things kind of go astray. And also there is Linda Cardinelli, who, if you don't know who she is mainly known for her role in ER, and she plays one of the sisters in the story, and she kind of has an interesting past as well that we learn a lot about throughout the story. And so what I really liked about this show is that each character had a major storyline, and it wasn't solely focused on the brother. The brother's name is Danny, the one that returns, and his actually played by Ben Mendelsohn. I don't know if that's how you pronounce his last name, but he was in Rogue One, which I didn't watch, but he plays the brother that returns to his home, and he is kind of the black sheep, and that's mainly because of what happened in the past with their sister that I'm not going to talk too much about because that would kind of spoil a lot of the season. But yeah, I really enjoyed this series. Like I said, every character had their own like plot line, which I really enjoyed, and a lot of it stemmed from what happened in the past, and it was really interesting to see like how they revealed what happened in the past, because they didn't just do it all at once. They kind of showed like bits and pieces of that event, and it was just really interesting. It was really well filmed. It was such a beautiful series because they are on the Florida coastline, and they really like added that as like a main focus to the story. And so I really enjoyed the cinematography. The acting was just amazing. Even though you weren't supposed to like Danny, there are certain parts that like kind of made you feel bad for him, and you really wanted to know like what happened in the past that has caused this like disruption between him and his family. So yeah, there was like a lot of twists and turns. It was really slow burning, but like in a good way, because you were like constantly thinking about what was going to happen next, and you just didn't know what was going to happen next because they kept revealing things that I didn't predict at all. I mean, as we got more in depth of the thing that happened in the past, I kind of figured out like what happened before they fully revealed the incident. But yeah, it's just a really good show. I would highly recommend it. If I had to give it a grade, I would definitely give it an A+. Hopefully I can start season 2 soon. There are 3 seasons. It unfortunately did get canceled, but there are 3 seasons, and I am planning on watching all 3. So yeah, the next show that I finished was 13 Reasons Why season 2. I watched season 1 as soon as it came out because I was honestly really interested in seeing how they were going to adapt this into a TV series. It is a book. I actually didn't read the book first. I bought the book a really long time ago, and I never ended up picking it up, so I picked it up after I watched the show. And season 1 I really liked. Season 2 was I would say kind of a hot mess. There are certain parts of it that I really liked, and certain parts that I was just not a fan of. Basically, in season 2, we follow the aftermath of Hannah's suicide, and Hannah's mom sues the school for not doing as much as they could with helping her out. And so throughout the season, we are going along with this case and watching the testimonies of the people involved in the tapes that Hannah made. So we're revealed a lot of those people's like past and actually dealing with Hannah. But the one thing that I really didn't like is that I felt like it was trying too hard to be a platform for a lot of things. They talked about drug abuse and addiction, as well as abuse, sexual and physical, and then obviously rape and bullying and gun violence. Like, there were so many things that they were trying to come across, but I feel like it didn't really come across as well as it could have. I really wanted it to just focus on the case itself and the growth of these characters after Hannah committed suicide, and I felt like it lacked a lot of that. I mean, they kind of showed that throughout the season, but I feel like they could have done more with that instead of talking about all these different other issues, because I really felt like I was just trying to be a platform for all these issues for season 2, and yeah, I just didn't really enjoy that part of it. However, there were a few characters that I ended up really loving from hearing their testimonies. For instance, Zach Dempsey. I really fell in love with this character. He just seems like he would be such a good guy, but like he is obviously pressured by his friends, and it really sucks because he is way better than a lot of his friends. And yeah, I just really liked his friendship with Alex because they were really getting close, because he was helping out with his rehabilitation after Alex tried committing suicide at the end of last season. There are things that I liked about it and things that I didn't. So if I had to give this a grade, I would give it a C+, just because I think it was trying to be too hard into something that it wasn't meant to be. So yeah, I'm not sure if I'll watch season 3. I mean, I probably will, just because I can watch it all at once, and I'm kind of interested in seeing what they do for season 3. But did I think it needed a season 2? Not really, unless like they did more of character development through these testimonies. I think it would have been a lot better. But yeah, the final show that I finished in the month of June, Westworld season 2, and this show was went on a weird churn. I mean, it's a really weird show in the beginning because it follows our main character Dolores, who is a part of this amusement park called Westworld, where humans can go to kind of give in to all their sins and all their temptations without any flashback or anything. They basically can do whatever they want because they are doing it to these robots. Through Dolores' eyes, we see that some of these robots actually have memories and feelings, and they actually have human emotion, and they don't want to be these slaves. So season 2 picks up like right after we left off season 1, but there is like a lot of stuff happening in season 2, kind of like what I felt about season 2 of 13 Reasons Why. I thought there was so much going on that didn't really need to happen. Each episode there was another big reveal and another big reveal, and I feel like it was too many big reveals all at once, and I really wish it kind of just focused on one major story, because it did kind of get confusing. One thing I did like about it is that we got more of a history of the Man in Black, and I really enjoyed, I mean, not really enjoyed because it was a really heartbreaking past, but I really liked seeing more about him, and like his reveal was kind of crazy, even though I kind of figured it out like halfway through the season, but it was just, that was one big reveal that I actually really did enjoy. But yeah, like I liked the retaliation of the robots against the humans. I thought that made for a really like adventurous story, and we actually got a lot more world building of Westworld, because there are many different stories within Westworld are talked about. And yeah, so those are like the main things that I liked about Westworld. So, but if I had to give it a grade, I would probably give it a B+. I really did enjoy it. I thought the writing was spectacular. I thought the world building was really great this season, and also the character development that we got. But I think it, like, there was so much added to the show that I didn't really think was necessary, so that kind of like threw me off, and it kind of got really confusing throughout the entire season, so I was really having trouble figuring out like what was going on. But yeah, overall I really enjoyed it. So those are all the books and TV shows that I read and watched in the month of June. Like I said, I didn't read a whole lot just because June got really crazy. But the books that I did read, I did enjoy overall. and the TV shows that I watched I did enjoy overall as well. So I'm not gonna go into the synopsis of the books I'm reading for the Canadian Read-EH-Thon. I'm just gonna read the challenge that goes with the book, and if you are interested in learning more about the synopsis, I did just post a blog on my blog site, so I will leave a link to that site down below. But yeah, so there are essentially 5 challenges in the Canadian Read-EH-Thon. So the first prompt was to read a book with red on the cover because the Canadian flag is red and white, and for this I am reading The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood. Margaret Atwood is a very popular Canadian author, mainly because of The Handmaid's Tale. I've been really interested in reading this story ever since the TV show came out. I haven't been able to watch the TV show because it's on Hulu and I don't have Hulu, but I'm really excited to get into this book. I did start reading it yesterday and I'm listening to it on Audible, and it's actually narrated by Claire Danes. So that's really cool. I'm just really fascinated by this world. It seems like a very interesting dystopian world, and yeah, so I'm really interested in getting into that one. The second challenge is to read a book written by a Canadian female author. And I thought I wouldn't do this readathon justice if I didn't read Anne of Green Gables by L.M. Montgomery. This is kind of a staple classic in Canadian literature, and I haven't read it yet, but I thought this would be the perfect time to read it. And I did start it on the 1st, and I'm really liking it so far. And it's just such a curious character, and I'm just really excited to learn more about her as well as the family that she has moved in with. The third book was read a book with E and H on the cover because Canadians say A a lot, and this was really hard to find, but I decided to go with The Handmaid's Tale for this because E and H does show up multiple times throughout the title, not in the exact order and not right next to each other. But that was the only book that I could think of, and I didn't want to add an extra book because I'm not going to try too hard with this readathon, so I just thought it would be fun to participate with a few books and stuff. The fourth challenge is read a book by an Indigenous Canadian author, so a Canadian author with Indigenous roots, and so I wanted to read Arrow Thieves by Cherie Demaline, I believe. I have no idea if I'm saying that name right, but I believe she or he is Cherokee and is from Canada. But this book sounded really interesting to me. Again, it's another dystopian novel, but you guys know I love dystopian novels, and it sounds like it touches on a lot about humanity and what would happen if we lose something that is so important to us, and how we would treat other people that may not look like us. So it sounds really heartbreaking and emotional, but also just really, really interesting and thought-provoking. The final challenge is to read a book set in a province that you've never been to. So I had a lot of freedom with this one because I've only been to Victoria, Canada, which is in British Columbia, and that was on a cruise. So I could choose every other province except for British Columbia. And so for that one, I chose The Home for Unwanted Girls by Joanna Goodman. And this book sounded really interesting to me because it talks a lot about the orphan asylums, which I didn't know but was a really big part of Canada's history, and it was a really kind of depressing part of Canada's history, and it kind of touches upon in Anne of Green Gables, and so I'm really interested in learning more about the orphan asylums, and I think I will be able to through this book. Alright guys, so that concludes my June wrap-up and my July TBR. I will be posting my TBR for the Summer Biannual Bibliothon in a separate video. But yeah, let me know what your favorite books were that you read in the month of June and what you plan on reading in the month of July. I will have all related links in the description box down below, and hope you all have a great July reading month. So ta-ta for now, and happy reading. Bye!